Hi, Megan. Thank you very much for taking your time out to speak to me today about Marvel's Moon Knight. I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing your thoughts on the whole costume design.
Well, very
Uh,
nice to meet you.
Thank you. So, I'm going to ask, what was your sort of role on Moon Knight, and sort of what did you actually have to do?
As the costume designer, I created or collaborated on all of the looks for the entire show, and that included creating Moon Knight and Mr. Knight.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask, what was the process like, kind of creating the Moon Knight costume first?
Well, Marvel has a great team called the Viz Dev Department, and so I collaborated with them in the essence of they had already started kind of working out a general idea of the Moon Knight and the Mr. Knight costume for the series. And when I came in, I just jumped right in and helped collaborate on those costumes. And once we started going to fabrication, I created my own fabric in a sense of taking a Euro jersey and layering on the 3D prints. So we ended up creating multiple different textures within the suit for the Moon Knight costume. And then the Mr. Knight costume, we had the delightful pleasure of finding all those meters for all the suits that we had to make. So we found a pretty sensational fabric that was white, but it had a slight little lame in it. So when the light hit it, it would like bounce off and have like a little shimmer.
And I've got to ask about with like the Mr. Knight, like almost like is it like a helmet, or how does that kind of work?
It's a mask, so it
Yeah.
has a hard shell in it, so that and the fabric is pulled over it. So once you do that, that's where the magic happens. But there's full movement, and Oscar could get in and out of it no problem.
Yeah, because I must admit, I mean, the costume designs are just incredible, and especially like just the reaction of seeing Mr. Knight, with how different it looks to Moonlight. But was there kind of what I mean? Obviously, there was a technical difference, but was one easier to work with than the other?
They both had their challenges, and I think that the Mr. Knight costume was the one I was the most terrified of because a three-piece suit can go wrong so quickly, a white suit. But it actually turned out so wonderful, and I made it completely in-house with amazing in-house tailors that we filmed in Budapest, and they did such a phenomenal job. And we created so many, and the lapels were all hand done in Budapest, and we even custom made the buttons. That is Khonshu's symbol, is the button on the vest and on the arm, and we created those in house and everything. So that was really phenomenal. The Moon Knight costume had its challenges because of the pandemic. So FBFX built the costume under my direction, and I couldn't go to the UK because of lockdown. So we would send the stunt people there because it was very important to me to make sure that the suit could be fully functional and that they could move in it. So they would go and they would quarantine, and then they would do the fitting, and then they would come back. So all the fittings I had were over Zoom until the costume came to us in Budapest. So that was more of the challenge.
Yeah. So how many costumes were kind of made for each one? Because obviously, as well, like with it being pretty much white, I imagine that was pretty difficult to work with.
Yes, the Mr. Knight costume, I think we had 47. If you watch episode 2, they completely wet down the street of a cobblestone street that was kind of dirty. So we burned through a number of them a day.
Yeah, I
um,
must have bad much of
but
a white one on.
yeah, it wasn't easy, but it was definitely, I was very, very fortunate that my amazing tailors could just power through and make that many, and they did, and they were impeccable. And a lot of them we would clean because it's an upholstery fabric. So the fabric, I knew there would be challenges keeping it white, so we did use an upholstery fabric, and it would clean up pretty
Yeah.
nicely.
I mean, especially because I mean, they are such an impressive, especially Mr. Knight's sort of that suit is so impactful. So I'm going to ask on other characters, what was like the influence on kind of coming up with characters for like Arthur and also like Stephen and Layla and stuff, and how that was different.
Yeah, so with Stephen, I collaborated with Oscar a lot on that character just because that was who we kind of went with first. We tried to discover Stephen first before we discovered Mark. And I wanted to make sure Stephen's character is supposed to live in Brixton, which is in London. And we wanted to make sure he lived in this cool area, but he's not too cool. So what can we do to make him interesting, but still fit into the geographical location that he's living in? And we decided that I found these amazing vintage shirts for Oscar. And I wanted to, if we use those, then we cropped the pant, but then we kind of have a shoe that's a little clunky. But really, I was like talking to Oscar, and he was like, what if I like change my posture? And as soon as he changed his posture, I feel like we found the character instantly and really could work from there. With Harrow, Ethan and I sat for a very long time and just talked about references, and he talked about Tolstoy, and I brought up Koresh, and we collaborated on making it a mix between like Koresh and also a monk. And that's why all of his looks are linen and light and being able to travel or being like, you can acclimate to any area. So it was really great collaborating with them. And then when it came to Layla, I talked a lot with Mohammed Diab about this character because yes, she's Egyptian, but I pushed very hard to say, but how long has she lived in London or other places? Because a transient person doesn't necessarily continue on with the culture, but they always have it within them. So she has symbolism within her earrings and jewelry. And then also the first time we see her in London, we wanted to make sure she was a little bit more colorful and had a little bit more life to kind of represent that Egyptian culture.
And sort of with all the different like locations and stuff, did that have like an impact obviously on other characters and stuff, and like trying to get all that put together?
Oh, yes. So because of all the different locations, I wanted to make sure that not only did they work in the location, but the fabrics were okay. And we needed to have sun protection and sand protection by the time we got to the desert. And what would people in the desert actually wear versus like what you put in a TV show. So it's pretty true. Like everything they pretty much would wear. So that would work, but it definitely played a part in making sure that the characters were protected, but also the actors were protected, but the characters were really driven by costume.
Cool. And final question really is, excluding Moon Knight, what has been your favorite Disney Plus original so far?
I think WandaVision was pretty sensational. I think that was kind of fresh and new, and no one was really expecting that. So I think that was pretty well done.
That's great. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your work on Moon Knight. The suits are incredible on both of the main characters, and yeah, just thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much for taking your time out to speak to me today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Also, a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and also on our YouTube channel memberships. And I shall see you guys in another video. Laters.